Uh-oh, I think we're live, man.
We are. This is definitively the podcast live on Spectacular Spoiler League YouTube channel.
Yes, sir. What up, Leaguers? Welcome to the Spectacular Spoiler League. I'm the Pandan Superman, the mayor of Hype City, Hazyrome, and as always, I'm joined by the God of Night, the Prime Minister of Post-Production, Deepboyce. And today is a semi-joyous day because we're talking about the movie deal talks between Disney and Fox, potentially leading to an eventual deal that could unite the X-Men universe and the Fantastic Four universe with Marvel's MCU. Now, as it stands today at the recording of this video, the talks are dead. But we know that the talks have been on and off for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long, but it definitely has been going on for a while now. And the fact of the matter is, it could very well happen. So, Deepboyce, man, dímelo, talk to me. What's going on, man?
Yes, I mean, listen, this is something we've been waiting for since forever, since before Spider-Man ended up on the MCU.
Yeah.
And then we somehow got that in some sort of weird, bizarro Frankenstein type of deal that we still don't even know the details about. And, I mean, before that happened, the talks were on and off. We weren't even sure if this was going to happen. So we're hoping here that this is going to repeat itself, where the talks are on and off, and then Fox and Disney come to some sort of deal, come to some sort of terms. Even though this is different from that Spider-Man deal. In the Spider-Man deal, they were trying to just iron out Spider-Man and some other properties.
They were sharing.
In this one, the Disney is trying to straight up buy 21st Century Fox, like everything, the whole kibosh, everything that's included. Or most of the subsidiaries. I mean, there's still a lot of it is hidden out there. And for those of you that don't know, I guess, the landscape of what's going on here, of how we got to this in the first place, basically Sony owns Spider-Man and a number of properties that are associated with Spider-Man. Fox owns the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and a couple of properties there. They did a little bit of a juggle before Age of Ultron, where they, Marvel and Fox traded a few things here and there. And Universal Pictures, I believe, owns the Hulk still. That's why we haven't seen a solo Hulk movie.
Yeah, that's a little complicated. We won't get into that. But yeah, essentially, more or less.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's the situation here with Fox and Marvel and, and Disney, I should say, is that they would, like you said, be straight up own the rights to make make movies with the X-Men and Fantastic Four characters and whatever other characters Fox owns. Now, the interesting part about this isn't the fact that, as it stands at the recording of this video, as we're doing this live, isn't the fact that talks are currently dead. It's the fact that the talks have been on and off. And that draws parallels to the talks that Sony had with Disney back when they were working out the kinks between having Spider-Man be in the MCU. Because back then, they were actually, Kevin Feige was actually, there was actually two versions of Age of Ultron that, I think it was actually Civil War, that had Spider-Man in it and didn't have Spider-Man in it. And then there was also a version of Age of Ultron that was supposed to not necessarily have Spider-Man, but have at least kind of a shout out to the character. But they weren't able to get the deal done by the time Age of Ultron, production was finished. But we all know now that he ended up in Civil War. But those talks were on and off, man. Like, those talks were in a situation where it's like, yo, Sony, what up? How about that Spider-Man? Yo, can I hold that down for a couple months? It was like, they were hanging up a phone on each other, I presume, and they eventually came to a deal. Now, with this Disney-Fox deal, I think the interesting factor in this is that Fox, like the larger Fox Corporation, seems to actually want to get rid of 20th Century Fox to focus more on basically the news and sports side of things. So they actually want to focus their company more, which is why they're even talking about selling it. So this is a situation where, I mean, maybe Marvel called them up and asked, or Disney called them up and asked if they were interested, but this is a situation where this could potentially benefit both parties. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
So this is a situation where it's not like 20th Century Fox isn't like, oh man, these X-Men movies are doing pretty bad. We're trying to get rid of them. This situation where Fox is like, we want to refocus, maybe shift our business direction. And I think that is the key thing to remember in these on and off talks, because if they believe that this is something where it could benefit them in terms from a business perspective, that allows for more incentive for them to want to sell it off. So even if it doesn't happen today, or next week or next month. This is a deal that could happen a year from now, 2 years from now. Like, if Fox still has that point of view, that mindset, this is a deal that could happen, you know, at any point. You know what I mean? I think that's the interesting thing there, because as far as we know, these talks weren't happening, but now we know that they are. Yeah, which is an interesting prospect, man. What do you think about all that, man?
Well, honestly, what I'm really thinking about is if, you know, okay, I'm thinking that there's a rather good chance that this is going to fall through. I honestly think that we're going to see some of these properties make their way back into Marvel's hands or Disney's hands, into the MCU.
You think so?
Because
you think it's going to happen?
I'm just.
What are your odds here? Like, my
odds, 75%.
Oh, you think it's a 75%?
75. Because I remember when we were talking about the whole Spider-Man thing, I thought we gave it. I'm sure if we find one of those conversations we had, we probably gave something around like a 16% chance. Like, we really did not think that was going to happen.
That's not accurate.
I know.
Did you say that before?
This is me kind of thinking back to my mindset back then.
Okay.
I didn't really think like it was going to go through.
All right.
And I can mistake, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you thought it was that likely that Spider-Man would make it back into Marvel's hands in any capacity.
I don't honestly remember, because part of me also feels like they were really screwing up Spider-Man, and that really remember that deal? What really pushed that deal over the edge is the Sony email hack. Yeah. So a lot of emails with plans for their movies, their Spider-Man movies, leaked out, and the reception was just terrible. And I think Sony was like, all right, maybe this Aunt May solo movie that we had planned wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, it took an email hack for them to realize that somehow.
Anyway, continue, sir.
But obviously, you know, I think Marvel. Listen, despite your feelings, you guys out there on Marvel, they've been firing on all cylinders. They've been making it happen. All right, I think Marvel is more than ready to kind of incorporate any and all of these characters any way that they can into their movie universe, especially with things kind of culminating within the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to need a new phase. We're going to need something. And to have this whole roster there ready,
definitely.
I mean, there's nothing better that Marvel could be asking for at this point in time. But when you're looking at Fox, this is a bit of a hairier situation. But like you said, the entire company, not just the movie side of things, but the entire company is thinking to themselves, you know what, we want to focus on other things, and we're willing to get rid of our movies. Yeah. So, yes, we've talked about this before. Fox has an ungodly amount of announced movies just slated in the next, I don't know, 1,000 years or whenever it is, however long they're planning on making movies. But those things could easily get scrapped. And, I mean, it sucks that people are going to be out of jobs, especially a lot of these like X-Men people, and they already got the New Mutants movie coming out. It seems like it's pretty much wrapping up, finishing. And really the only one that I think is going to make it is going to be Deadpool, because that just makes a lot of money.
Deadpool 2?
Deadpool 2. And I guess maybe even Cable to an extent. But again, I'm wondering, how is it that they can, in some way, shape, or form, incorporate the Fox properties, X-Men, Fantastic Four, into what we already got in the MCU. I mean, obviously, we could probably wait till post Thanos, but the possibilities are endless in a sense.
Right. The first thing that comes to mind is that right now they're currently in principal photography, which is film talk for filming for Avengers 4. So my thought, and this was my immediate thought, was that if they were ever going to integrate the Fantastic Four or X-Men, or at least open up the notion that those worlds could be connected with the MCU, it would have to do with the Reality Stone or one of the Infinity Gems messing up things with like the reality and opening that world, that opportunity up. So my first thought was like, Thanos is definitely going to be using the Infinity Gems, and he's going to be abusing that. And I already, you know, we've talked about this personally, me and you, Deepboyce. So let me know in the chat if you hear what I'm trying to say, if you agree with what I'm saying here. But Thanos, I think there's a good chance Thanos actually messes with, like, straight up rewrites like reality to the way he sees fit in order to remove the Avengers as an obstacle, you know, in his path. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. But the whole thing is, we know that the Infinity Gems have the power to straight up rewrite reality to the way he sees fit. Not just the time gem, I mean, you got the Reality Stone. Like,
I think
there's
it's
so
the Aether,
many,
right? From
the
Thor,
Aether,
from
right?
Thor 2, the
Yeah.
critically acclaimed movie. One of the
Thor: The
best.
Dark World. There's ways that it can happen. So for me, you know, if I'm Kevin Feige and I know this deal is coming close, and I think, you know, it definitely is gonna happen, I'm thinking Kevin Feige might have an idea. He might speak to the Russo brothers who are doing Avengers 4, who are heading up as Avengers 4, and he might be saying, all right, let's have a plan, even if it's like an end credit scene. Maybe it's something where the Infinity Gems aren't destroyed and they're used to do one last thing before, you know, they're written out of, you know, the continuity or some form, some way, shape, or form, and they somehow rewrite reality or change something subtle about reality to the point where it allows for X-Men and Fantastic Four characters and whatever Fox-owned characters you're talking about are able to, you know, enter this world. I mean, one idea I had, and this is kind of similar to Flashpoint in some way, which is if Thanos were to change reality, if he were to alter reality, and the Avengers somehow are onto that idea and they're able to figure out what's going on, what if in changing reality back to how it should be, there are some small cracks in the way things were reshaped to be, and in that sense, what would happen is essentially something New 52-esque would happen, where the timeline isn't quite what it was supposed to be when the timeline was fixed, or when the reality was fixed, and that allows for the entrance of mutants and all kinds of other things that, you know, are Fox territory.
That's interesting. I mean, because I feel like the X-Men will probably be the most difficult, or just mutants in general would be the most difficult one to integrate. I mean, given the history, apparently, you know, mutants came about in the 60s, right?
Okay.
So to suddenly just kind of change that up, you're going to have to...
Bro, we talked anything X-Men established in terms of timeline could be tossed out in that scenario.
Yeah. So mutants are just going to be... Because someone in the chat, and let me just get their name real quick, just so I can give them credit, because they came up with a good... DC Chronicles. Yeah. They said that maybe integrate what up DC Chronicles, but maybe integrate the X-Men in the same way that they did in the Ultimate line of comics, where the X-Men were part of the Super Soldier program. They were sort of like an offshoot of that, which, again, like you're saying, in terms of some sort of Flashpoint scenario, that could be a small caveat that they change that they could make it seem like, oh, this is something we've kept or S.H.I.E.L.D. has kept top secret for years. Just like Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel was supposed to take place like in the 90s, and it doesn't seem like anyone even knows what's going on there. So you can, you know, however little bits of mutants that you throw out there, however you want to establish them, instead of kind of integrating the whole story of like mutants in society and random people being mutants, which they kind of, you know, that's a little too inhuman-y, and I think they want to get away from anything that seems like Inhumans. So
the movie universe will not be tackling anything Inhuman anytime soon. They've used the word enhance for anybody who has powers that aren't like from, you know, another universe. So anyone on Earth who has powers, they've been using enhanced in the MCU as their term.
So, you know, I totally agree. And that's what they did with, I think, even Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. They called them miracles? Enhanced? Yeah.
Or miracles.
And they were a part of experimentation from Loki's staff, apparently, which is a small little thing, and it's not your fault if you missed it, because Age of Ultron didn't do the best job of explaining it. But
it's a Tesseract.
Yeah.
Not the Tesseract.
It was the soul,
it was
the mind gem.
The mind gem.
Yeah. But maybe that could introduce mutants or the X-Men as more of an X-Force type of group, like some sort of covert team or something. Because obviously, you know, the X-Men, again, it's a school of kids, and that would be kind of weird for them to suddenly just say, oh, we've been experimenting on kids, and, you know, Charles Xavier's coming out of nowhere. He's like, oh, I'm going to put him under my umbrella. So like you said, that's a great way of doing that. We also have Doctor Strange and the Fantastic Four, which they're known to traverse through dimensions and portals. Sure. So that could be an avenue to bring in not necessarily the X-Men, but maybe some of these other characters, like... Well, I guess Doctor Doom could still kind of be around already, and you could just kind of say, oh, well, he's already been here. But, you know, Kang the Conqueror, Annihilus, Galactus is now up for grabs if they decide to introduce them into the MCU. So the rest of the characters, even like I said, the Fantastic Four, we could just say, oh, well, they've kind of already been here, but we just never really talked about them. Yeah. So, and any loose ends, like you said, Reality Stone, Thanos shenaniganery could say, hey, there's a flashpoint. You know, the past isn't what it was because reality was fragmented and fractured.
Sure. And as Fernando Rosales, you know, he's saying in the chat right now, you know, it could be a combination of the use of multiple gems. So it could be the reality, space, and time gem combined to change the universe and mold it in the way that, you know, it needs to be. But I think first of all, I just want to say, like, in terms of Galactic and some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Celestial characters that Fox owns. I think that's relatively easy to integrate because the galaxy's big. It could just very well be a situation. The universe is big. It could very well be a situation where Galactus is just not a character you know of. You know, Silver Surfer is not a character that's known or been discovered by any of the main MCU players right now. In terms of the human characters, I mean, you raise a good point in that respect about, you know, how it could be a situation where they've just been covert. My thinking is also, like, it could also be a situation where maybe these characters are younger and mutants are relatively new to the field. I mean, X-Men is currently doing that right now with having a younger X-Men team. You know what I mean? In the movies with like X-Men Apocalypse, X-Men First Class, and the upcoming X-Men Dark Phoenix movie. So what if, you know, the advent of mutants, maybe they're just a younger group of people where mutants are first coming to the forefront. I mean, all this time, you know, enhanced people haven't really come to the forefront, you know, publicly, you know, before, you know, now in the MCU, really.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
before that, Nick Fury already hinted at it in Iron Man.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, you know, you think you're the first hero? Like, there's a whole larger universe you don't even know about yet, Tony." And that could be the same for us.
Instead of the catalyst being again like in the past, like you said, that we could just change it like, oh, it just happened like recently because again, reality gem or stone or whatever, or you know, these space things that are being introduced. Because originally the X-Men were just like, oh, this is part of the. It was a. I guess they're talking about the proliferation of nuclear weapons and how that kind of radiation would start creating mutations. But you know, obviously we've had like Chitauri and like foreign things landing on Earth, so that could also cause people to start their physiology changing. I mean, it happened in Agents of Shield, where like the what was it, the Terrigen crystals were they ended up in fish.
Yeah,
and people were consuming them. Yeah.
That was pretty smart. What if you bring up the Terrigen mist and the Terrigen crystals being in the fish oil? What if mutants are kind of? What if? And
boy, would it be an interesting time to kind of bring that up. Like that message would just reapply again itself perfectly in 2017.
No, I agree. I mean, I was gonna say, what if it was a situation where, you know, the humans, the Kree picked humans to experiment on because they saw potential in human genes, right? What if the Terrigen crystals acted in a way where, you know, these people who the latent abilities within humans are unlocked by the Terrigen mist without these people necessarily having inhuman genes? So what if this is just as we've already seen introduced in the concept of mutants in the X-Men universe? What if this is just a natural progression which has been activated by the Terrigen mist as a catalyst? So what if it's a simple situation? Like the explanation that MCU currently, or on the TV side of things, is that Inhumans are people who have inhuman genes, so they're descended from the original people the Kree experimented with. But what if, you know, these new mutants, and I use that term, I put that in air quotes because I don't mean the new mutants, like the team. I mean these newer mutants. What if they're just kind of like an effect of the Terrigen crystals acting like a catalyst? So very similar to the Inhumans. But you know, maybe it's a situation where, I don't know, maybe they're dying, just like they are in the comics, where the Terrigen mist actually kills mutants. What if the situation where they're dying and you have to find a way to save them, and people are like, should we save these mutants? They're dangerous, or should we let them die? You know, and the argument of how to be humane with these people who are affected by something that they're not in control. Yeah,
and you mentioned being an offshoot of what the Kree already did. They could just make that a caveat. Just say, hey, the mutants were another one of their experiments that didn't exactly pay off. Like they were kind of discarded, you know, and then eventually it kind of worked on the humans, and that's what worked out. Because I mean, you know, according to what happened in comics, the mutants they came to be a thing. Mutation came to be a thing because of meddling, you know, of the Celestials way before the Kree even came in and decided to do their thing.
That's a good point. Maybe it could be another Celestial that came to meddle. Maybe the humans, maybe the Kree got that idea from another Celestial.
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, and really and truly, now I don't know how viable the X-Men are. I think anything that Marvel does, the MCU does, they could push it into popularity, and maybe we could see a resurgence of the X-Men. Because let's be honest, they're not as popular as they used to be when you and I were growing up, Hazy. They were super popular. No, so they could just cherry pick some of the popular ones and just kind of just rewrite them just a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I want to talk about some of the other ideas. Toby in the chat, you know, he's insinuating that maybe they should just have a straight up multiverse situation where, you know, as you said, dimension crossing, things like that. Maybe the Fantastic Four simply exist in another dimension at this point in time, and the way that X-Men and Fantastic Four are integrated into the MCU is by that measure. Now, you could even set that up for an event like, I don't know, Secret War or something like that, where the universe is integrated later on after you've now established the MCU versions of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. What do you think about that?
So let me get this straight. You're saying after
I'm saying set them up in their own separate universe.
So there's like another connected universe of X-Men and Fantastic Four, and then eventually they kind of all cross over.
Correct. In like a big like multi-universe crossover event, so to speak.
Honestly, I wasn't even thinking about that, but that, if pulled off, that could be really interesting because that's a storyline. I mean, we've been kind of wanting that from DC. Like some sort of Flashpoint or Crisis. But that is something that should be done at some point in time if they could pull it off, especially if you already have a history of a lot of these movies.
Right.
Again, the question is, how would it just be a brand new thing that would have nothing to do with Fox's multiverse of X-Men? Would it just be, I mean, I'm kind of asking, like, what do you think? It would just, they would start from the get-go? Because I don't know would Marvel really want to start kind of over again?
I think with the majority, especially given the mess that the X-Men timeline is, like, let's be honest, the X-Men timeline at Fox established is a mess. It's a mess. It is. Like, it is messy. I think that I honestly, genuinely think, with the exception of maybe Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I would think that the MCU would want to start over. And honestly, I could even see them just saying, as great as Hugh Jackman was, it's time to move on, because he had a logical and very nice conclusion with Logan. I mean, Andrew Garfield was well liked as Spider-Man, and they were like, you know what, we're moving on.
Listen, real quick about Hugh Jackman. He said he would only come back if he were in the MCU. I would kind of want to see him just one last shot.
I would want to see that, of course, man. Absolutely. You know, I mean, to that effect, you know, they could definitely still have him in there as like an older Logan. Maybe there's another actor who plays a younger Logan and he plays the older Logan. Maybe that would be fine with me too. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Chief Jeans in the chat, he had a question, and I guess I want to put it out there. He said, how do they title their films if most of the X-Men movies use the semicolon and subtitle with their events? Well, I think the Marvel movies also use that formula. Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War.
It technically is
Thor, The Dark World.
It's Marvel's blank semicolon blank. I think that's the technical titling. So
exactly. So I mean, you could do Marvel's X-Men Dark Phoenix. That would still work. So I don't really think the naming scheme would change very much. And once again, they already use that formula. I mean, Avengers, Age of Ultron, like it's already, you know, semicolon, yada yada yada.
Thor Ragnarok. I mean, it's a short compared to some of the other ones, but that is Thor semicolon Ragnarok.
Right. Thor : Ragnarok. Exactly. So I mean, I think that won't be a big problem. The real question is, and I've seen some people posit this in the chat, is whether or not they would straight up, you know, integrate these characters, whether or not they would have them exist in the same universe, or reboot the entire thing altogether. And that's actually something I want to talk to you about. Like,
all of MCU?
The whole damn MCU. Would they do that? They could literally just say, oh, this is another universe. This is another Earth in a multiverse. As simple as that.
Could they do it? They need some very good justification. Like, if the end of the Thanos saga is like death and destruction, or like it's like maybe they can defeat Thanos, but nothing's gonna ever be the same.
Yeah.
Then I could see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't want to see a full-out reboot too. But the only thing that makes me say that is the fact that Kevin Feige has been saying that, Avengers 4, the now untitled as it stands, Avengers 4 movie will be the end of what they've been building up since Iron Man 2000 in 2008. Now he didn't say that's the end of the MCU. He just said it's kind of like a metaphorical end to the whole saga that they were building up from that point.
Yeah.
Toby said he doesn't know if they would cast Hugh Jackman as an action hero. Bro,
listen, that guy is in better shape than all of us combined. Okay.
Stuntman, first of all, that's the first thing I say. Stuntman. Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, if you're worried about how Hugh Jackman looks, look no further than your boy J.K. Simmons. Have you seen J.K. Simmons working out?
He's Commissioner Gordon. He doesn't need to be in shape.
He doesn't even need to be in shape, bro. But he is jacked, and Hugh Jackman is a beast. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I would love to see it, man. I mean, I personally would love to see all of that, man. But Deepboyce, man, let's wrap up this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Any final words? If you're in the chat, hit the final words right now, and we'll see what we can answer maybe before we head out. But
yeah,
what's your final thoughts on this, man? Do you think it's gonna happen? How would you like them to do it? Like, what was your definitive way of seeing X-Men and Fantastic Four merge with the MCU for the biggest, like, boner we've ever had in terms of nerd content?
I'm gonna end that with two things. One, I'm gonna answer your question, and two, I'm gonna pose a question for everybody that's watching the video and in the chat. For starters, to answer your question, whatever it's gonna be, I want it to be. They need to go big or go home. They've been. If you've noticed with the movies, they've been getting crazier and crazier and sillier and sillier. They've been taking risks.
Yeah.
Keep taking those risks because I'm loving that. I'm loving that Marvel.
Yeah.
And my question is, do you think when it's all said and done, this is not too much related to the whole X-Men thing and Fantastic Four, but at the end of this Phase 4 or the Thanos storyline, do you think it's going to be a major event? Or do you think it's just going to just end and then we'll just kind of like calmly and silently continue our Marvel movies afterwards? Do you think there's going to be some like major reality destruction going on here, changing, whatever you want to call it? Or are we just going to calmly just defeat Thanos and keep moving on with their lives with the next movies?
Well, I see some responses in the chat. Dr. Strangelove thinks that the Avengers should end everything fighting Galactus. So he thinks that Galactus should be like the end game if this deal were to work out the way we want it to work out.
I like Isaiah Adams' answer there. He said he wants it to be spectacular. I like that.
Isaiah Adams, you the GOAT for that, man. That's what I'm talking about, leaguers. I mean, for me, I will say that I would love for. I'm like you. I want them to go hard or go home. Like, I want if this deal's gonna work out, like, it's gotta be a united universe. Now, all signs point to Marvel possibly simplifying their formula in Phase 4. With that, when I say that, I mean I don't think they're necessarily gonna shy towards the big like narrative that they built, where everything was connected from 2008 to like now and Avengers 4 when that comes out. Like, every movie has been connected in some way, shape, or form. They've all been furthering one, a narrative, one larger narrative. I think Phase 4 is going to simplify things a little bit. And, I don't know where the X-Men or Fantastic Four would line up in that plan, but I want them to go hard or go home. I don't want multiple universes unless the end game is going to be those universes coming together.
Yeah,
from a logistical standpoint, that might be difficult. I'm asking a lot.
Real quick, honestly, if it's gonna be multiple universes, it's gonna be like a Secret Wars type of thing, where everything is destroyed and like a few number of people make it into this pocket dimension, and then this battle world, and then they just reform everything afterwards. Like I'm saying, it's gotta be because if everything ends and then they start it over and Spider-Man is like, oh yeah, I'm back. It's like, come on, that just wouldn't entirely make sense. People just come back and like, oh, we're back to reality. It's a little bit changed, but I'm glad that I'm back.
Saying if it ends, it ends. It's it. That's no more movies. That's what you're saying?
Oh no, I'm not saying no more movies. I'm just saying it's gotta have
consequences.
Yes, it's gotta make sense. They gotta build up to it, and nothing can be the same afterwards. Like you can't just go on with your merry ways, making these funny Thor movies anymore. Like, like people got to be changed.
I agree. And to spin off of what you were just saying just now, somebody in the chat, I can't remember who it was, but they were kind of asking about whether or not there would still be rated R films if X-Men and Fantastic Four were brought into the MCU. That's a damn good question, and I guarantee you this: if the MCU ever did their own interpretation of Deadpool, they would most likely, I would think that they would honestly still go with the rated R route. Now, I tell you right now, if Deadpool crosses over into any other movie or any other, like an Avengers film, he's going to PG-13. Yeah. He's going back to PG-13. But for his solo movies, rated R. I honestly think they would stick with that.
I think that's a discussion. That's a discussion for another video that we should honestly make. Marvel Max, does that have a future in the movies? Because they're doing a Punisher. That's like that. Marvel Max. Some rated R Marvel movies, and hey.
I like that. That being said, guys, for anybody in the chat, like right now, anybody watching this video, we have a Discord, okay? If you're watching this on a video, it'll be in the description below. Head to that Discord so we can continue this conversation 24/7, okay? And for anybody in live chat right now, the main man, the mod of mods, AMJ, is posting that right now in the chat. So join up with that Discord. You can talk with myself and Deepboyce anytime you want. But with that being said, show some support to the Spectacular Spoiler League, y'all. Hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button so you can be up to date with the latest and greatest coming from the Spectacular Spoiler League. We need your support. Deepboyce, we need your support.
Yes.
We need their support.
We need
Tell
it. We need it.
Drop a like on the video because that helps the video get out there and we can recruit more leaguers to the cause and have more of these dope-ass conversations right here on the Spectacular Spoiler League, baby. I'm Hazyrome, that's Deepboyce, and we're signing out of here. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Bong, bong.
Bong, bong. I like that.